Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me where and what time you're watching? Thanks. I never wanted to be noticed. Growing up, I found ways to blend in, not out of shyness but survival. My mom used to say I was born with my guard up. I learned early that attention wasn't always kind. In high school, that meant avoiding drama, keeping my circle small. But even then, things got messy. My last year at Tacoma Community College, I roomed with a girl who spread rumors behind my back, accused me of stealing my own anxiety meds. I moved out before finals and swore I'd never rely on shared walls again. Since then, I stuck to predictable routines, coursework, weekend babysitting jobs, and early nights. No risks, no questions. That's how I ended up outside Unit 2C of the Hartwell Townhomes one cold, wet Sunday in February 2024. It was one of those heavy-skied evenings when the light fades early and everything feels distant. Avery Street looked almost deserted, rain sliding down my windshield in thin, watery lines as I double-checked the address Dana Maxwell had texted me. The townhouse was modest but tidy, red brick with gray trim and a porch light that flickered faintly. I knocked twice. Sean and Dana answered together. They were maybe mid-30s, dressed like they were heading to a business dinner. He in a blazer, she in a simple black dress and flats. Their eyes were a little hollow, the kind of tired that didn't just come from parenting. Dana avoided direct eye contact, fiddled with her phone while Sean handed me cash up front. "Harper's already down for a nap," Dana said, brushing a damp strand of hair behind her ear. "You probably won't need to do much. She usually wakes around dinner, maybe wants a snack, then back to bed." Before they turned to leave, Dana added without meeting my eyes, "Don't go into the basement. We're redoing the floor, and the lock doesn't always catch. Just stay upstairs." It was a weird thing to emphasize, but I nodded. I didn't want to pry. The house inside was quiet. Clean, but unnaturally so. Bare walls, thin rugs, furniture that looked recently bought or deliberately sparse. It didn't feel like a home where a child lived. No framed family pictures, no toys lying around. Even the fridge was spotless. Upstairs, Harper's room was the only space that seemed lived in. There were finger-painted drawings taped to the walls, books stacked on a tiny shelf, and clay figures on the dresser. They weren't cute animals or happy faces, though. Most had wide mouths and sharp, mismatched eyes. One looked like it had been stepped on and left that way. Harper herself was curled in bed, asleep, breathing slow. She looked peaceful enough, a little girl with curly brown hair and a Band-Aid on one elbow. I left my bag near the stairs, settled on the living room couch, and tried to focus on my homework. The dishwasher hummed. The rain tapped steadily against the windows. But the silence under it all was too perfect. It wasn't just quiet. It was stifled, as if the house itself was listening. At 6:40, I headed to the kitchen to reheat some soup I'd brought. On my way back, I noticed the basement door. It had been fully closed when I arrived, but now there was a slight gap, a soft line of shadow between the wood and the frame. I stepped closer, reached for the knob. Locked. I told myself it hadn't really moved. Maybe I misremembered. Maybe it wasn't latched all the way. But something in my stomach turned over slowly, like a warning without language. 10 minutes later, I heard a sound. It was quiet, faint. A shuffle, like bare feet on concrete. It came from below. I walked upstairs. Harper was awake, staring at the ceiling. Her eyes tracked the plaster like she was following invisible cracks. "Hey, Harper, you okay?" I asked gently. She didn't answer right away, just blinked slowly. "The other girl used to sit downstairs," she said flatly. I paused. "What other girl?" Harper rolled onto her side. "The one they said not to talk about." That's when I knew something was wrong. I texted Dana and Sean. No reply. I told myself they were just at dinner. Maybe service was bad. But the longer the minutes stretched, the heavier my chest felt. I tried to focus on the clock. 2 hours left. I sat near the front hall where I could see both the stairwell and the basement door. I kept one eye on the time, the other on the shadows. The hum of the dishwasher ended. Then the fridge made a strange knock. I turned on every available light. My phone buzzed. It was my brother checking in. I told him I'd be home by 10. At 8:20, I went upstairs again and read Harper a story. She didn't ask for one. Didn't even look at me. But I read anyway, something about a bear that gets lost in the woods. When I reached the part where the bear finds his way home, Harper muttered. She didn't. What did you say? Harper shook her head. Nothing. I turned on her nightlight. She closed her eyes. I stood in her doorway longer than I needed to, trying to make sense of that ache in my chest. Something wanted me to go downstairs. Or maybe something didn't want me to. Either way, I couldn't stop thinking about that open door. I walked back down and stood in front of it. I pressed my ear to the wood. There was no sound, no movement. Then, like breath against the grain, "You're not like the last one." I jerked back. My vision swam. I didn't know if I'd imagined it, didn't want to know. I locked myself in the bathroom for 10 minutes to breathe. At 9:10, the front door clicked. I stood up fast, waited for voices. Nothing. The lock slid into place with a soft clack, but no one walked in. No Dana, no Sean, no footsteps upstairs. And downstairs, a faint yellow light flickered behind the basement door. I packed my bag. I texted my brother, "Come now." I planned to leave. Just go. I told myself Harper would be fine for 15 minutes. I'd call CPS later. The idea made me sick, but it felt better than staying. At 9:30, I climbed to get my coat. Harper was awake. She grabbed my sleeve. "Don't come back," she whispered. "They don't like when the new ones ask questions." Her voice was so calm it broke something in me. She let go, rolled back to face the wall. I left the house in silence. The rain had slowed, mist curling at the edges of the porch. I stepped onto the driveway and dug for my keys. Then I saw it. The basement door had opened, flickering light, a shadow that moved with a slow, dragging sound. I backed away, heart thudding so loud it drowned the wind. I didn't breathe until I was inside my brother's car. He looked at me like I was having a panic attack. Maybe I was. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. I never babysat again. 2 days later, I saw the Reddit post. A missing girl, 17, last seen babysitting at the same address. The picture they shared wasn't even a photo. It was one of Harper's wall drawings. Blue dress. No face. It's been months now. I still think about what Harper said. The other girl. The whispers. The silence in that house. I still wonder, what would have happened if I'd opened that door just a few minutes earlier? Do you think danger always knocks? Or sometimes, does it wait, quiet, in the spaces we're told to ignore? I used to believe silence was safe. That quiet meant peace. That if the world around me stayed still, I could finally exhale and not worry what might come next. But sometimes silence isn't peace. It's pressure. The kind that builds slowly in the corners of a room until it hums against your skin like static. The kind that waits. I moved back to Eugene in April 2023, barely holding myself together. I was 23 and had just dropped out of university with 2 semesters left, emotionally drained and financially wrecked. Student loans didn't wait, and neither did the low hours at the used bookstore where I worked. The days blurred, overwhelmed mornings, skipped lunches, nights wide awake and watching the ceiling. I didn't want to admit I was unraveling, but I was. Quietly and completely. My older cousin Ava offered me a room in her basement in Silver Pine Residence, a quiet, woodsy neighborhood on the outskirts of town. She framed it like a favor to her. It's just for a while until you find your feet again. But I knew it was kindness. I accepted without hesitation. That first night I sat on the back porch with a cup of instant coffee, listening to the soft rustle of pine needles and distant crickets. It felt like the first deep breath I'd taken in months. The basement room was small, but warm. A full-size bed, a lamp with a dimmer, a little rug that looked like it had been there since 2002. I didn't care. It was clean and quiet, and it didn't come with rent. It was enough. I hadn't babysat since college. 2 years earlier, I'd watched a family friend's kid at a crowded grocery store, and the boy wandered off while I was distracted for maybe 20 seconds. The panic that followed, searching aisles, screaming his name, imagining the worst, triggered the first full-blown anxiety attack of my adult life. We found him, sure, but I never offered to babysit again. So when Ava asked if I could watch her 8-year-old daughter Zoe for a weekend, I hesitated. It was just Friday night through Sunday morning. She had a friend's wedding in Medford and didn't want to bring Zoe along. I said yes because I owed her, but deep down, I also wanted to prove to myself that I could handle it, that I wasn't just broken. Ava left Saturday at 5 p.m. sharp. She hugged Zoe, gave me a kiss on the cheek, and left a yellow sticky note folded on the kitchen counter with the Wi-Fi password, emergency contacts, and Zoe's schedule. Dinner at 6:30, movie at 8, bedtime by 9:30. She'd already made pasta and left it in the fridge. The freezer held microwave pancakes for the morning. Everything was normal, mundane. Zoe was polite, soft-spoken, and quiet, not in a shy way, just observant. She had big dark eyes that flicked toward the window every so often, like she was watching for someone, or something. She barely touched her pasta but thanked me with a little nod when I gave her a glass of milk. "You like puzzles?" I asked, watching her twist a handheld brain teaser cube. The lights from it reflected in her eyes. "Yeah," she murmured. "Helps me think." We played a board game after dinner, one of those simple color-matching ones where nobody really wins. She let me take a picture of her with the cube when she finished it. She smiled for exactly half a second. By 8:30, we curled up on the couch with a kid's animated movie. She stayed bundled in the corner, legs pulled tight to her chest. Every 10 minutes or so, her gaze shifted toward the front window, where the edge of the driveway and old iron gate were just barely visible from the couch. At 9:10, her voice cut through the movie like a whisper pressed into glass. "Is the gate supposed to be open?" I blinked. "What?" She pointed without looking. "The gate." I turned my head slowly. Sure enough, the iron gate at the front of the yard, the one Ava had told me was rusted shut years ago, hung slightly ajar. I walked over to the window, squinting through the screen. No wind, no motion. Just the gate, swaying almost imperceptibly. "Huh?" I said, trying to keep my voice light. Maybe a deer nudged it or something. Zoe didn't say anything. She just stared at the screen. "I'll check it later," I added, more to myself. "Okay," she said, and turned back to the movie. At 10:30, she was asleep upstairs in her room, teddy bear in her arms. I went around the house, rechecking the doors, front, back, side. I even opened the garage door briefly to make sure nothing had blown in. Everything seemed untouched. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. The kind that settles just under your skin. I curled up on the couch with peppermint tea and glanced at my phone. 3 unread texts from Ava. Just checking in. All okay with Zoe? BTW. Neighborhood text thread said some weird stuff tonight. Probably just raccoons again. Call if anything. I responded. All good here. She's asleep. What weird stuff? No reply. I set the phone down, muted the TV, and let the low hum of the fridge keep me company. The silence felt off. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't just quiet. It was intentional. Like the world had hit pause. At 11:40, I stood up to head upstairs when I heard it. Tap. A second later, tap, tap. I froze. It was the kitchen window. The tapping was faint but deliberate. I tiptoed over and peered at the glass. On the inside, faint condensation. On the outside, nothing. except the shadow of movement. A figure, slow, lingering just at the edge of the porch light. He wasn't close. He wasn't trying to be seen, but he was there. I crouched instinctively, grabbing the closest thing I could find, a metal spatula from the drying rack. Useless, but it gave me something to hold. I made my way upstairs to check on Zoe. Her room was dark except for the nightlight casting soft stars on the ceiling. I opened the door gently. She stirred, murmured something, eyes half open. Mom said not to go near the windows if he comes back. My chest tightened. Zoe, who? I whispered, kneeling beside her bed. Who comes back? She didn't answer, just turned over and pulled the blanket higher. I left her door open and crept back downstairs, this time grabbing the cordless landline phone from its cradle. I turned off every light in the house, sat low beside the living room window, peeked through the curtain, and there he was, a man, standing just beyond the gate. Tall, lean, wearing dark clothes that blurred with the trees behind him. He wasn't doing anything, not waving, not yelling, just facing the house, still, almost statuesque. Then he tilted his head as if listening. I pressed 911, my voice barely above a whisper, explained the situation, tried to keep it calm. The dispatcher said an officer was en route, but that the location, rural, low priority, meant it could take 25 minutes or more. I blinked, and the man was gone. Gone. I checked every door again, locked, deadbolted, garage, closed. I sat on the couch with a kitchen knife across my lap, ears straining for any sound that didn't belong. At 1:05 a.m., Ava called. Her voice was tight. I saw your message. What happened? I told her everything. The gate, the shadow, the tapping. Her face was probably pale on the other end of the line. She said, if anything else happened, I should take Zoe to a neighbor's. She'd leave immediately, try to be back by morning. I nodded into the phone. At 2:07 a.m., I saw the garage light flick on. No sound, just the light flooding under the door to the mudroom. I didn't freeze this time. I moved. I sprinted upstairs, scooped Zoe out of bed. She clutched her teddy bear but didn't scream, didn't ask questions. We need to go, I whispered. Okay? She nodded. Barefoot, we moved through the house, locking doors behind us. The garage door started to open, the slow grind of metal on track. I didn't look back. Zoe and I ran across the damp grass, the dew soaking our feet. I led her to the neighbor's house 3 doors down, knocked like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. An older woman answered, robe pulled tight around her frame. Please, I gasped. Call the police again. There's someone in the garage. She let us in without hesitation. Cops arrived in under 15 minutes. They found no signs of forced entry, no prints, no tampering. The garage was half open. The gate was wide, but nothing else. Then one officer checked the mailbox. There was a note wedged inside. You were quieter this time. No name. No other clue. Ava came home at 3:45 a.m. She ran to Zoe, eyes wild. She looked at me and said, you did everything right. 2 weeks later, I moved back into town with Ava and Zoe. The house got new cameras, a fence upgrade. The neighborhood formed a watch group. We never found out who he was, or why he was watching. But I've never babysat again. Not because I'm scared, but because sometimes kids see more than we admit. They feel things we dismiss. And when Zoe glanced at those windows, when she warned me in her sleep, I realized the truth. Some things don't leave footprints, and some people don't want to break in. They just want to be seen and remembered. What do you do when the thing outside isn't trying to get in, but waiting for you to step out? Do you trust the silence, or do you finally listen to what it's been trying to say? They always say the first job you land sticks with you, but they usually mean that in a good way. Your first paycheck, your first taste of independence, your first step toward adulthood. No one tells you how sometimes that first step feels like falling into a hole you didn't even know was there. I was 17 when it happened. That weird in-between age where you're too old to be babied but not old enough to make your own rules. My grandma had been everything: mother, father, cheerleader, and quiet protector. But she died in her sleep on January 7th. Just like that, I went from being someone's whole world to being a legal problem passed down like an old coat nobody wanted to wear. My aunt and uncle took me in because they had to. They had this big brick house on Sycamore Lane and 2 kids who never spoke to me unless I was in their way. They cleared out a corner room for me, window facing the garage, no closet, and started calling it Haley's room like that made it mine. I didn't argue. You learn quickly not to push your luck when you're the extra mouth. Dinner was a quiet affair. Sometimes my aunt would leave a plate on the counter, covered with plastic wrap after they'd already eaten. Most nights I ate alone, earbuds in, face lit by my phone screen, pretending not to notice the way my uncle's eyes stuck to me like gum on the bottom of a shoe. He never said anything inappropriate, but I felt it. You know that feeling, you just know. So I got it in my head that I needed to start saving. Not for anything grand. Not for college. Not for a car. Just something that felt like mine. I had this old mason jar I used to collect change in when I was little. I wiped it clean, labeled it Escape Fund in Sharpie, and started looking for anything that would put a few bills in it. Babysitting seemed like a good place to start. I wasn't dumb. I knew competition would be brutal. Most of the girls in my grade had family connections or glowing reviews from being summer camp counselors or whatever. I didn't have any of that. Just a barely filled out profile on a babysitting app and a desperate willingness to take anything. It took 2 weeks before I got a notification. March 25th, Friday night, 1 kid, overnight, $140 cash. The username was Thomas Clary. No picture, no reviews, just a vague bio. Looking for responsible sitter for occasional overnights. That was it. I stared at it for a long minute. It didn't feel right. It also didn't feel wrong. It felt possible. I accepted. He messaged back within seconds. Gave me an address in the east part of town, not too far, just past the industrial park, and said to arrive by 9:30. Said his daughter Maya would already be asleep. When I got there, something about the house just felt staged. It was clean. Too clean. A cream-colored 2-story with a narrow walkway, no porch decorations, no toys in the yard, no muddy shoes by the door. Everything about it was tidy but empty, like someone trying to recreate the idea of a family home without ever living in one. Thomas answered the door right on time. He was maybe early 40s, tall but not intimidating, wearing a gray button-up shirt like he'd just come from work. He smiled, polite, reserved, the kind of smile people give at funerals. "You must be Haley," he said, stepping aside. "Thanks for coming. Not many teens are willing to do overnights." "I'm not a teen," I mumbled. "I mean, I am, but not like irresponsible." He laughed politely as if I'd told a joke. "Come in. Maya's already out cold upstairs. Long week at school." Inside, it smelled faintly like bleach and lemon cleaner. The walls were a pale beige with no art. The furniture looked like it had been bought all at once from a catalog. Nothing personal, not a single family photo. No drawings on the fridge, no shoes by the door, no signs of a child living there. "You can hang out down here," he said, gesturing toward the living room. "She's a deep sleeper. I'd rather not disturb her." I hesitated. I'd just like to know where her room is, just in case. A flicker of something crossed his face, like irritation, quickly swallowed. "It's the second door on the right, but she really doesn't wake up once she's down." That should have been the moment I left. Instead, I nodded. He offered me tea. I said no. He asked about my school, my favorite subjects, if I liked movies, what my friends were into. Too many questions delivered in a tone that felt memorized, like he was reading from a script. I gave short answers, didn't make eye contact. Eventually, he stood up. "All right, I've got to head out. I'll be back around 6. Call me if you need anything, but Maya should be fine." He left. The door clicked, and then nothing. Just me in that strange, sterile house. After a long 30 seconds, I moved, quietly. Upstairs, second door on the right. I opened it slowly. No kid, no bed, no toys, no signs that anyone had ever slept in that room. It was empty, save for a dusty window and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. I checked the other rooms. One was an office with nothing but a laptop. One was a barely used guest room. The third was completely bare, no signs of a child anywhere. That's when the dread settled in. The thick kind that sits in your throat and makes your hands shake. I texted the app's emergency support. No reply. I called the number on his profile. Straight to voicemail. Generic default greeting. I locked every door, turned on every light, sat on the couch with my back to the wall, holding my phone like it could save me. At 12:20 a.m., the overhead light flickered. Then I heard it, the metallic sound of the front door unlocking. He was back. I didn't wait to see why. I ducked into the kitchen and crouched behind the counter. His steps were soft, measured. He didn't call out, didn't ask about Maya. Just walked quietly through the house, past the living room and toward the kitchen. I could see the sleeve of his shirt when he passed the fridge. I bolted. No shoes, no jacket, just me and adrenaline. I slipped out the side door, ran through the backyard, cut around the fence and didn't stop until I reached the gas station at the corner. I called Ava's mom, the only adult I could think of who wouldn't hang up or ask why I was out so late. She picked me up without questions, just handed me a hoodie and asked if I was hungry. The next morning I went with her to the police. We gave them the address, drove by the house. It was empty. No car, no signs of life. The lockbox was gone. One neighbor said it was an Airbnb that changed hands a lot. No one had ever seen a little girl. The babysitting app listing, gone by noon. The number, disconnected. I never told my aunt and uncle. They would have blamed me, or worse, ignored me. I deleted the app the next day, and I never ever took another job. Later I found a Reddit thread, girls who'd taken odd jobs through similar apps and vanished. Some were found, most weren't. Different states, same pattern. And to this day what keeps me up at night isn't fear. It's wondering if someone had planned the whole thing. If I was part of something rehearsed, like I was being watched, tested, like the house was a set and I was a scene being played out. Was I meant to disappear that night? Or was I just lucky? Some threats don't come with knives or chains. Some of them come wrapped in polite smiles and job offers. And you won't always hear danger coming, it doesn't shout. Sometimes it whispers. So I ask you this. If no one was watching out for you, would you know when to run? I swore I'd never go back to childcare. After what happened in Luxembourg, I didn't think I ever could. I'd spent 12 months with a wealthy expat family who made their money in tech, looking after 2 kids in a house where silence was currency. It wasn't loud tantrums or broken toys that drained me. It was the way everything was controlled. The kids weren't allowed to cry. Their schedules were manipulated with precision. Meals were quiet, hugs rare, and bedtime stories always skipped. After a while, even the kids stopped trying to be children. And me? I felt like a ghost with a pulse. I came back to the US hollowed out and barely functional, chasing sleep like it was a moving target. I moved in with my childhood friend Tasha in Montana and took odd jobs, grocery runs, admin work at a dog shelter, helping her out at the co-op. Whatever I could get that didn't require too much emotional investment. But emotional distance doesn't pay medical bills or car insurance. I'd been scraping by when Tasha forwarded me a babysitting gig one Thursday morning. Easy cash, good people, one night only, sweet kid, no weird requests, her message read. I stared at it for a long time. My gut twisted with a mix of dread and resignation. It had been over a year. Just one night. One kid. How bad could it be? I told myself I could survive it. Willow Creek was pure postcard in October. Golden trees shedding leaves like confetti. a bite in the air hinting at early snow. I pulled up at 3089 Redfern Drive at 6 p.m. sharp. The house looked like something out of a storybook. 2 stories, faded white siding with ivy curling up the sides, and a front porch with a creaky old swing that caught the wind just right. For a moment, I let myself breathe. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. James and Meredith Sayer greeted me at the door. Polite, almost rehearsed. James was tall, thinning hair, wiry frame. Meredith had that tight, elegant look some women carry when they're used to managing appearances. They smiled, but there was distance in their eyes. Not cold exactly, just careful. Our daughter's name is Lillian. She's 6, very independent, Meredith said as she handed me a small sheet of notes. Dinner's done. She's already eaten. Bedtime's at 8:30. We should be home by 1. James stepped in, adjusting his cuff. Just one thing, please don't let her go into the upstairs guest room. Flooring is being redone. It's not safe. It was the way he said it. Flat, quick, almost like it was memorized. A note of finality that didn't invite questions. I nodded. They left. I closed the door behind them and turned toward the living room. Lillian sat on the floor near the fireplace, cross-legged, hugging a tattered stuffed lamb. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves, and she didn't look up as I entered, just kept gently humming and whispering to the lamb. "Hi there," I said, crouching nearby. "I'm Callie. We'll hang out tonight, okay?" She gave a slight nod, but never looked directly at me. Her eyes stayed fixed on the lamb like it was giving her instructions I couldn't hear. I didn't push. I just sat a few feet away and pulled out a paperback, pretending to read while keeping half an eye on her. I figured if she wanted space, I could respect that. But even then, something felt off. Not bad exactly, just heavy, like the air itself carried too many unsaid things. Time crawled. At 7:45, I got up to rinse my tea mug in the kitchen. When I came back, the living room was empty. Lillian was gone. "Lillian?" I called softly, heart starting to pound. No answer. I checked the hallway, the bathroom. Then I looked up the stairs. There she was, standing silently outside the locked guest room door. Her hand was on the doorknob, her head tilted slightly as if listening to something. I climbed the stairs slowly. "Hey kiddo, let's come back downstairs, okay? Remember what your parents said about this room?" She didn't move, just said, almost too quietly, "She says I should sleep up here tonight." "Who says that?" "The girl in the room. She says she's lonely." I swallowed hard. "Lillian, sweetie, that room's off limits, come on." She let me guide her down without a fight, but she looked back over her shoulder the entire time. "She says you don't believe in her," she whispered, just before we reached the bottom. "That's why she's angry." The door had been locked. I checked it. I even jiggled the handle. But inside I heard something faint, like soft scratching. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a squirrel in the wall. Maybe the wind. Lillian curled into bed at 8:30, her lamb clutched tightly. She didn't want a story, just asked for the door to be cracked open a little. I tucked her in and left, heart still thudding. I curled up on the living room couch, trying to focus on my phone. No signal. No response from Tasha. No messages from the Sayers. The silence of the house wrapped around me like a too tight blanket. Then, around 9, the baby monitor lit up. It wasn't the sound of Lillian's soft breathing I heard. It was heavier, slower, measured, not a child's breathing. My stomach dropped. I ran upstairs. Lillian was asleep, but the closet door in her room was open, and the lamb gone. I checked the monitor again downstairs, flipping through the feed. Then I found something I hadn't noticed before. A second camera, the guest room, grainy black and white. A woman sat on the bed, long gray hair hiding her face, rocking slowly. In her lap, the lamb. The timestamp flashed, live. My fingers went numb. The room had been locked. The monitor never mentioned. I grabbed my phone. "James, No answer. Meredith? Nothing. My breaths came fast, shallow. I raced up the stairs and pounded on the guest room door. Hello? Who's in there? No reply. Then the door creaked open, by itself. I stepped inside, flashlight in hand. The air was ice cold, dusty, still. The rocking chair swayed faintly. On the floor lay the lamb. I bent down to pick it up, then froze. In the mirror I saw myself, but not alone. A girl stood beside me, pale, hollow-eyed, rope burns around her wrists. She stared at me with a gaze that seemed to know me, like we'd met before, even though I knew we hadn't. My skin went cold. I turned, heart racing. No one was there. I grabbed the lamb and fled downstairs, Lillian now awake and crying softly. I bundled her in a blanket and waited on the porch. At 1:05 a.m., headlights appeared. James and Meredith stepped out of the car like nothing had happened. I met them on the walk, trembling. "There's someone in that room, a girl. I saw her, the monitor." James went pale. Meredith looked like she'd been slapped. "That room belonged to our first daughter," she said softly. "Eliza. She died 5 years ago. In that room," James added, voice strained. "We kept the camera on, in case she ever came back." I handed them the lamb and left without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't babysit again. A week later, a package came in the mail. No return address. Inside, a crayon drawing of 2 girls holding hands. One was Lillian. The other had hollow eyes and rope-burned wrists. Beneath it, in jagged writing, "Now she has someone to talk to again." The drawing stays in my desk. I never open it, but I know it's there. And sometimes late at night I think about that house, about the mirror, about what I saw. And I wonder, when we ignore grief long enough, does it find new ways to be seen? What would you have done if it were you standing outside that door? They say when you try to bury something, it doesn't stay gone. It waits, quietly, patiently, like mold in the walls or a faint hum you can't place. And then, one day, it finds its way back. Not always with warning. Not always when you're prepared. For me, it started with a desk being flipped. I used to be a first-grade teacher. A good one, I think. Patient, structured, the kind of teacher who remembered which kids hated chocolate milk and which ones needed an extra minute before answering aloud. I had a classroom full of little drawings pinned up around the whiteboard and kids who hugged my waist during dismissal. That ended on a Tuesday morning in February. Marcus, one of my quieter kids, had what the administration called a behavioral episode. He screamed about something no one else could see, something in the corners of the room. Then he hurled his desk across the floor like it weighed nothing. The sharp scrape of metal on tile jolted every kid into stunned silence. But me? I froze. I didn't move. I couldn't speak. My vision tunneled and I dropped right to the floor like someone pulled the plug on me. A full-blown panic attack in front of 26 first graders. The school placed me on administrative leave by the end of the day. They couched it as concern for my well-being, but I knew the truth. They couldn't have someone who shut down under pressure around children. I left with my belongings in a cardboard box and my dignity in pieces. For the next 3 months, I barely left my apartment. Therapy helped, but it was expensive. The bills didn't care about my mental health. My therapist, Dr. Hill, mentioned exposure therapy, getting back into situations that triggered me but in small, manageable ways. I thought she meant shadowing a class or helping at the library. She meant babysitting. At first I laughed, but after a week of ignoring the suggestion, I saw a post on a local neighborhood board. A couple needed an emergency sitter for their daughter. Just evenings. Low pressure. 1 kid. I applied half on impulse, half out of desperation. A former co-worker from the district vouched for me. They didn't ask many questions. That's how I found myself standing on the porch of 59 Alderberry Lane on May 19, 2021. A dull, overcast Wednesday, with sweat on my back and a stomach full of nerves. The house was tucked into a neat neighborhood in Middleton Heights, Indiana. Brick homes, trimmed lawns, American flags fluttering on porches. The kind of place people move to for quiet, safety, a second start. Exactly what I was hoping for, too. The Claxtons, Rachel and Damon, answered the door together. There was something precise about them. They didn't smile much. Their clothes were pressed, their hair perfectly in place. Rachel had a clipboard. Damon wore a watch he checked constantly. "Zara's sensitive to routine," Rachel said as she handed me a folder. "Everything she does in the evening is scheduled. Please do not deviate." I nodded. "Of course." "There's a copy on the counter," Damon added. "The emergency contacts are in here." He gestured to the folder. "If anything goes wrong, call us first." I remember feeling like I was being tested, not welcomed, like I was already one wrong move away from failing. They left at exactly 5:08 p.m. Zara was sitting on the edge of the couch in the living room, hands folded in her lap. She looked about 8, with long brown hair and tight braids, wearing a pink dress that looked brand new. Her expression was unreadable, blank like a school photo taken too early in the morning. I knelt beside her. "Hi, I'm Natalie," I said softly. "I'm here to hang out with you tonight, okay?" She nodded without meeting my eyes. "Okay." "Your mom said there's a schedule for tonight. Is it still on the counter?" She glanced toward the kitchen, then looked down. "She hides it. Who does?" "Mom. She says I shouldn't touch it." I paused. "Okay. Do you remember what's first?" "I think TV," she said slowly. "Or maybe dinner. But we're not supposed to eat yet." My instincts told me to be flexible. "It's just a schedule, right?" "It's okay," I said with a smile. "We'll figure it out together. Let's start with dinner. You hungry?" Zara looked down again. "She'll know." "Who will?" Zara didn't answer. Her eyes welled up. She hugged her knees to her chest. "She always knows." I was about to ask again when a sound came from the living room behind me. Soft and strange. A lullaby. It wasn't loud. Just enough to be heard. Something from another time, like an old music box. The kind with the little ballerina twirling under a glass dome. A song I'd never heard but felt like I had. Slow. Delicate. Off-key. Zara's face twisted in terror. She screamed, covering her ears. "Turn it off. That's her song. That means she's watching." I bolted to the stereo. I hadn't touched it. Neither had she. It was playing on its own. I yanked the plug from the wall. Silence. "Sweetie," I said, crouching next to her, heart still racing. "Who's watching?" She curled tighter. "The real babysitter." I stared at her. "What?" "She watches through the mirrors," she said quietly. "If we mess up the schedule, she gets mad." I didn't know what to say. I'd heard kids say strange things before, but this didn't feel like imagination. It felt rehearsed, like a warning. The rest of the evening passed in a haze. I tried to keep things light, coloring, puzzles, questions about school. But Zara was always glancing at the mirrors. At one point, she went to her backpack and pulled out a red photo album. "This is the schedule," she said. I opened it. Every page was labeled with a time, 5:30, 6:30. Each one had a photo of her doing something, brushing her hair, eating cereal, playing piano. But in every picture there was a mirror in the background. And in every mirror, a woman, pale, long hair, dressed in a gray nightgown. Her eyes were deep black hollows. She wasn't posing, just watching. Still. Silent. I flipped through every page. "Who took these?" I whispered. "Mom." "Why is she in all the pictures?" "She's always there. That's why we follow the schedule." My fingers went numb. "How long has she been here?" Zara's voice dropped to a whisper. "Since my old babysitter got sick." I wanted to run. I should have. But I couldn't leave Zara. Not with that thing, whatever it was, looming in the background of her life like wallpaper nobody noticed. At exactly 8 p.m., every light in the house flickered. Just once, like someone had exhaled inside the wires. I turned my head toward the hallway mirror, and I saw her. She stood behind me, just behind my reflection, pale, unmoving, staring. I spun around. Nothing. "Zara," I whispered. "We need to hide. Now." I pulled her into the guest bedroom. No mirrors. I opened the closet door. "Inside," I said. "Stay quiet." She didn't argue. We stayed in that closet for hours. I kept checking my phone. No messages, no missed calls. I texted the Claxtons. Nothing. Around 10:30, Zara fell asleep leaning against me. My leg had gone numb. My arm hurt. But I didn't move. Then, at 11:15, the stereo blasted back on. The same lullaby, but louder, and underneath the music, a voice, a woman's voice whispering through static. "You forgot bath time." I jumped to my feet, grabbed Zara. "We're leaving." We crept down the stairs. I didn't dare look in the hallway mirror, or the one near the kitchen. We ran barefoot into the night, across the lawn, pounded on the neighbor's door until they opened it. They called the police. The Claxtons returned at 12:42 a.m. Damon looked stunned. Rachel didn't. When I told them what happened, she didn't ask what I meant. She only asked one thing. "Did she follow you outside?" I stared. "What?" "She's not supposed to leave the house." I wanted answers. I wanted logic. I got none. "She watches. That's her job," Rachel said calmly. "You broke the schedule." I didn't say goodbye. I left. Didn't take the money. Didn't even grab my shoes. 2 weeks later, I quit babysitting. Took a remote job doing educational training modules for teachers. Something boring. Something far away from kids and definitely far away from mirrors. I thought that was it. But then a package came. No return address. Inside was a photo. Me and Zara, huddled in the closet, door cracked just enough. And behind us, her, the woman in gray, standing, watching. I moved apartments, changed my number. I keep towels over every mirror now. I haven't looked into one directly in months. Because the thing no one tells you about routines is that they're not always for you. Sometimes they're for what's watching. When control starts to look like containment, you have to ask, what happens when the thing being contained learns how to break the rules? People always say that independence is freedom. For me, it started because I had no other choice. I was 21 when I signed a lease for a studio apartment that smelled like nail polish remover and steamed rice, wedged above a tired little nail salon on East Latchmere Street in Camden Flats, the kind of place where the hot water sputtered like it was choking, and where the walls were so thin I could hear the downstairs man cough in his sleep. But it was mine. Just me, my books, and enough silence to finally hear myself think. Before that, I'd been living everywhere and nowhere. A cousin's spare room, a few nights on someone's couch, sometimes just my car. My dad was a moody wreck and remarried twice in 5 years. My stepbrother once punched a hole through the drywall because I asked him to turn down his music. That was the night I knew I had to get out. To cover rent, I babysat. I was in the county college's forensic science program and pulled late-night study sessions more often than sleep. Babysitting fit. Night hours, decent pay, and quiet enough to read or study while kids slept. Most of the time. Rosalie lived in 1B, directly below me. A hospice nurse. She was probably in her early 30s, always in scrubs and always tired. We didn't talk much besides nodding in the hallway, but she seemed like someone who carried more weight than she let on. She knocked on my door one evening, nervously twisting the strap of her purse. Said she worked nights, had a 3-year-old daughter named May, and was desperate for help. Her usual sitter bailed, and she needed someone in the building, someone she could trust. "You wouldn't have to go far," she said. "Just downstairs. She usually sleeps straight through. You can bring your books, study. I'll pay cash." I said yes without much thought. Same building, no commute, extra money. Sounded perfect. She seemed relieved but distracted, kept glancing down the hall as if waiting for something. The first night was November 9th. It was cold enough to see your breath outside. I knocked at her door a few minutes before 8 p.m. She opened quickly and stepped aside to let me in. May was already asleep in her room, a quiet little space with soft purple walls and a mobile of plastic stars over her crib. The apartment smelled like lavender oil and something faintly metallic. Rosalie showed me around quickly, pointed to a list of emergency contacts on the fridge, then hesitated at the door. "One thing," she said, almost like an afterthought. "My brother lives above me. He keeps to himself. If you hear anything, just ignore it. He won't bother you. But don't go upstairs, okay?" I blinked. "Okay, but..." She was already pulling her coat on. "He doesn't like visitors. It's nothing to worry about. Just let it be." And then she was gone. The place settled into silence. I took a seat on the couch with my laptop and cracked open my forensic pathology notes. Every so often I glanced at the baby monitor, which showed May curled up in her crib, one arm wrapped around a stuffed bunny. She looked peaceful. I let myself relax. At around 9:30 p.m., I heard footsteps above me. Slow, deliberate, pacing. Then a dragging sound, like something being pulled across the floor. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Another thump. I muted the laptop and stood up, heart knocking against my ribs. Rosalie had said her brother lived up there, but why wasn't his name on the building directory? I'd seen it, just mine and Rosalie's. The third-floor unit had always looked vacant, curtains always drawn, no lights, no movement. Still, someone was up there. I walked to the front window, looked out. No car in the driveway that wasn't already there when I arrived. The top floor stayed dark, and then the hallway light flickered, buzzed, then went out. I flipped the porch switch. Nothing. Total blackness outside. The baby monitor crackled. A voice, low and hoarse. "Why did you move the girl into my room?" The monitor slipped from my hands and hit the floor. I ran into May's room. She was asleep, unbothered, but her nightlight was unplugged. The window was cracked open an inch, the curtain fluttering in a cold draft. I shut and locked the window, checked the closet, looked under the crib. Empty. Then came the knocking. Not at the front door, on the ceiling. Measured. Steady. 1, 2, 3. I picked May up and held her against me. My legs were trembling. My breath was short. The fear was more than fear. It was instinct. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. I stepped into the hallway, still holding her. The air felt different. Dense. Like walking through water. I climbed the stairs barefoot. The door at the top of the building was cracked open, just enough to see moonlight sliding across the wooden floor. Inside, the apartment smelled like mold and rot. The air was thick. My eyes adjusted slowly. The walls were gray, peeling in long sheets and smeared with what looked like fingerprints. Red, brown. A man sat in the far corner, on a bare mattress facing the wall, a pillowcase tied over his head. His wrists were taped in his lap. He wasn't moving, just breathing, shallow, rasping. I froze. All around him were drawings, hundreds, taped to the walls, the windows, the cabinets, all of the same girl. Pale skin, long black hair, no mouth. She was always standing alone in different rooms. May's room, the living room, the hallway, always staring, always near something broken. Above the light switch was a note scribbled in red ink. "Stop bringing the children. She wakes up when they cry." I backed away, still clutching May, trying to keep my breath quiet. I ran. We locked ourselves in the bathroom. I called Rosalie. No answer. I started dialing 911. The dispatcher answered quickly. I whispered everything. The man upstairs, the drawings, the voice on the monitor. She kept me on the line. Minutes crawled by. Every sound made me jump. May was dozing against my shoulder. Then I heard the front door open. "Jenna?" Rosalie's voice. Shaky, worried. I unlocked the bathroom and stared her down. "What's going on? Who is he?" She sank to her knees, crying. "My brother," she whispered. "He's not well. He hasn't been for a long time. I was supposed to find a facility, but I couldn't do it. He was quiet, always contained. But when kids cry, he hears things." I stared at her. "The girl with no mouth?" Rosalie's face drained of color. "He used to talk about her when he first moved in. Said a girl died up there before us, but there's no record." I looked. "Still, he hears her. Says she hates children. Says she watches. You left your daughter here, with that thing above us." I didn't think, but I didn't want to hear it. Police arrived minutes later. They found him, unresponsive but alive, scarred, emaciated, bound, by his own hand, Rosalie said. He hadn't eaten properly in days. Child services took May. Rosalie was questioned. I left. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I packed everything I owned and left Camden Flats behind. I don't tell people why. I just say the heating was bad. Mold, noise. But I remember what May said the next morning before they took her away. She looked at me, her voice soft and serious. "The girl with no mouth says thank you for not waking her up." I didn't answer. Some things don't want to be questioned. They just want you to listen. So I ask you, if fear is a signal, not just panic but a warning, why do so many of us ignore it when it matters most? They say guilt has a scent, bitter, metallic, like rusted pennies or the inside of a drained swimming pool. For me, guilt didn't just linger. It lived in my skin, in the soft tissue of my throat, in the places that never fully healed. I was 19, barely into my second semester at Fairview College, and most days I felt like I was walking with a hollowed-out version of myself. I didn't drink, didn't date, didn't laugh like other girls in my dorm. I studied child psychology with an almost obsessive drive, as though if I could just understand what made kids tick, I could undo the one mistake that defined me. 2 years earlier, my little sister Hallie had drowned in our backyard pool. I'd been babysitting. I looked away. 30 seconds, maybe a minute. The silence that followed has stayed louder than any scream since. I stopped babysitting after that. I stopped trusting myself. But something in me ached to prove I wasn't permanently broken, that I could still be someone worth depending on. The night everything changed, it was cold and cloudy. March 13th, 2022. I remember the air had a bite to it, that sharp stillness right before a storm. My phone buzzed as I sat cross-legged on my dorm bed, books scattered around me like they meant something. The name on the screen, Tilda Grover. She left a voicemail, needed a sitter. Said it was short notice and her grandson would already be fed by the time I arrived. Easton Heights, 1962 Birch Grove Avenue. She'd gotten my name from an old campus job board. I almost said no. I had exams, reading, a body full of nerves. But I kept thinking, if I can do this without panicking, maybe I'm healing. So I called her back. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "I'll be there by 6. Birch Grove Avenue looked like a neighborhood locked in time. Weathered houses with wide porches and tilting mailboxes, yards full of dormant azaleas and the skeletons of swing sets. Tilda's house sat at the end of the street, quiet, the windows half covered with sagging curtains. There was something faded about it, like a photo left too long in the sun. She opened the door before I knocked. Mid-60s, gray bun, blue cardigan buttoned too tight. Her smile was thin and brief. "Thanks for coming, dear," she said, her voice clipped but not unkind. "Braden's in his room. Quiet boy. Doesn't give much trouble. I left snacks out. Don't worry about anything, except that door." She pointed down the hallway. A heavy wooden door sat across from Braden's room. Brass knob dulled with age. "That's old storage. You don't need to go in there. Don't let Braden near it either. He knows better." Her voice dropped slightly at the end. I nodded. My heart beat faster, but I told myself all houses have a weird room. Braden was 6, skinny, pale, mop of brown hair in his eyes. He looked up when I walked in, but didn't say much. He had a collection of toy cars lined up with military precision, sorted by color and size. I tried small talk, offered to read, even knelt beside him to help with a Lego tower. When I asked if he had a favorite story, he stood, walked to a small shelf, and pulled out a worn paperback. I read the title and felt my stomach twist. "My sister lives under the floor?" "Bit dark, huh?" I joked, trying to keep my voice light. Braden looked up at me, dead serious. "It's not a story. She's still mad." My smile faltered. "Who's mad?" He didn't blink, just nodded toward the locked door across the hall. "Emmy. She's not allowed to come out." That name hung in the air like a sudden draft. I swallowed and tried not to show it rattled me. "Kids have imaginations," I reminded myself. I told him gently, "That's okay. Sometimes we imagine things to help us feel safe." Braden didn't answer. He went right back to his cars, aligning them again with quiet focus. I kept busy, made mac and cheese, poured juice, double-checked the monitor. Every time I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, I looked like someone trying to wear confidence like a coat that didn't fit. After dinner, I read him a different book, light, harmless. As I tucked him in, he murmured through half-closed eyes, "Emmy watches me sleep." It chilled me. I didn't know why. Maybe because it reminded me of how Hallie used to whisper about shadows in her room, how I brushed her off. I stayed beside him until he fell asleep, then walked quietly into the living room, trying to shake the feeling I wasn't alone in the house. The silence felt heavy, claustrophobic. That's when I heard it. Scratching, not the walls, not the attic, the locked door. Soft, deliberate, not rats or settling wood, a pattern, something with intent. I put down my class notes and crept toward the hallway, each step cautious. My hand landed on the doorknob. It was cold, like it hadn't been touched in years. I pressed my ear against the wood. Breathing. Slow. Wet. Not mechanical. Human. Then a whisper so faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it. "Tell him to stop pretending I don't exist." I backed away so fast I hit the hall wall. My legs shook. I told myself this was a tired mind playing tricks. Old houses creak. Kids say weird things, but I didn't believe it. I couldn't. I checked the monitor. Braden was asleep. I tried texting Tilda. No reply. I debated calling a lift and walking out. But then I thought of Braden in that room alone. I couldn't leave him. Not like I left Hallie. At 10:30, Braden emerged in the dim hallway, clutching a sheet of paper. "I drew her," he whispered. The crayon sketch showed a girl in a small room, her arms out, her mouth sewn shut. At the bottom, in shaky 6-year-old letters, "She watches me sleep." I stared at it too long. "Tell me about Emmy," I said softly. He didn't look at me. "She used to have a room. Then she made Nana mad. She broke the baby." He turned and walked back to bed. Like it wasn't a big deal. I didn't follow. I couldn't. I sat in the living room shaking. I stared at that drawing like it held answers. I don't remember closing my eyes, but I must have drifted because the next sound I heard wasn't my thoughts or the refrigerator. It was metal rattling. That door again. Not soft this time, harder, insistent. I jumped up, heart in my throat. I raced to Braden's room. His door was open. He was sitting up, staring calmly at me. "She's not in her room anymore," he said. I turned. The closet door behind him was cracked open. Inside, 2 bare feet, small, Pale, frozen, I felt my body make the decision my brain couldn't. I ran forward, grabbed Braden in one swift motion, backed out, slammed the door, locked it with fingers that couldn't stop trembling. I ran to the bathroom, locked us in, sat on the tile floor, holding him, whispering, "We're okay. You're safe." I called 911. My voice shook. I told them everything. The operator's voice was calm, reassuring. "Help is on the way. Stay with the child. Stay on the line." Minutes passed like hours. My breath fogged the bathroom mirror. Braden pressed against me like he trusted me completely. That terrified me more than anything else. The knock came at 12:15 a.m. Police, flashlights, calm questions. Tilda behind them, confused, shaking. They forced open the locked door. Inside, the air was thick and rotten. Dust in every corner. Under loose floorboards, beneath a sealed vent, remains, small bones, tangled hair, a rotting stuffed bear, a girl, Emmeline Grover, Braden's older sister, never reported missing. They say she died years ago, before he was old enough to understand. Tilda broke, collapsed, said she tried to hide it. She was ashamed. She said Emmy changed one day, got cruel, broke a baby doll, then hurt the real baby. That she had no choice. I don't know what's true. Braden never cried, just watched, like he knew the whole time. CPS took him into care, for safety. I moved out of Easton Heights the next day, left that house in my rearview mirror, praying I'd never see it again. But I still do. In dreams. Sometimes Hallie's in that locked room too. She doesn't speak, just stares. Sometimes I wake up gasping, heart in my throat, hands reaching for a phone that isn't ringing. I did everything right that night, but guilt doesn't care about facts. Guilt wants answers. And sometimes it asks questions like this. If a child tells you someone's watching them sleep, would you believe them? Or wait until it's too late?